Leftist commentator Kyle Kulinski is being accused of shaming 2024 Green Party candidate Cornel West for running outside of the party duopoly. Let's watch.
Now, on the Cornel West front, look, understand something. I would like to talk to him and ask him, what do you think you're doing here? Like, what do you think you're doing here? Do you actually think you can win? Because you can't, because we don't have ranked choice voting. We still have first past the post voting. So what's your highest goal that you think you could achieve? Is it the 5% for the Green Party? Is that what it is? So that you can get matching funds and make it more viable? But again, I hate to tell you, the Green Party and no third party will be viable unless and until we get ranked choice voting. Because until that point, there's always going to be this perception you're just a spoiler candidate. And by the way, if we get into a general election and it's Biden versus Trump, and Trump ends up winning because Cornel West got 5% of the vote or something, or 3% of the vote, and he gets blamed, that's going to set the movement back so much. People are going to look at leftists as spoiled brats who are just getting in the way. Now, that's totally separate from the question as to whether or not the spoiler effect actually is real. But there's going to be a perception that it's real, and everybody's going to blame the left for Donald Trump winning.
Some of Kulinski's viewers are calling this a mask-off moment for the YouTuber, since he pretty much said the exact opposite 2 months ago.
The backlash that's happening online, there's a decent amount of backlash where people are like, what are you doing? Like, do you know, like, who these people are? And then I see a lot of people making a point, which I think is a fair point, which is like, if you're going to run as a Green Party or an independent, because the Green Party, for example, I think the last election they had ballot access for 48 states.
Yeah, they have a real organization.
Yeah, even like the Libertarians have between like 48 states and 50 in all the states. Yeah. You know what I mean? So as far as third parties go, the only ones that are even remotely viable, and I use that term loosely, is the Green Party and the Libertarians.
I mean, you also have, DSA out there, which has never fielded a presidential candidate before, but they have, chapters nationwide, and it's a real organization with some sort of, infrastructure that could theoretically be mustered behind you.
Back in 2020, he tweeted, "As a left-winger who will not vote for Biden, I want you to know I'm 100% okay with you blaming me if Trump wins a second term. I mean it. Blame me. Then get to thinking real hard how you're going to get me to support your candidate the next time. Maybe even ask me, I'll tell you." So Kyle Kulinski, maybe a little bit hypocritical. I don't know, Jessica. That original tweet that he sent talking about how he wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden and he's fine with being blamed for Biden losing because he refuses to support him, and then criticizing someone for daring to run as a third-party candidate seems pretty inconsistent.
I don't know Kyle Kulinski's background. I don't listen to Kyle Kulinski. I don't know anything about him, but I can judge based off of what he has said there, that he has not spent a lot of time as a grassroots organizer. And I think when you're a political commentator and your commentary isn't routed in facts, in data, or the perceptions of the public or a political movement, you tend to get led astray. You tend to contradict yourself. And that's really what we see happening here. If you are someone who believes in what Cornel West's platform is, which I assume, and I'm sure his audience does as well, assume Kyle Kulinski does. But the argument he's making there is about viability of the movement, viability of the campaign that Cornel West is running. And he's complaining that if this doesn't go well for him and he pulls 5% of the vote or what have you, and it spoils the election and Donald Trump becomes president and those votes are taken away from Joe Biden, it is your job as a member of the left and a political commentator that's very popular, explain why that's not the case. Don't just be like, hey, this could cause some criticism down the line. Yeah, okay, what's your argument for why the criticism's invalid? We'll never get to a place where we have a viable third party that actually represents the ideas of the left if the left never runs candidates. There's about 60% of the country that's participating at most. This is not an argument about who's spoiling the election. Cornel West running is about pulling the 40% of the country that doesn't participate in the political process because they don't feel they're represented, because they don't believe in it. That's what populist movement should be about. So any excuse about, Cornel West just being a spoiler and that's why he shouldn't run is just service to the Democratic Party, just quelling any dissent from the left so that leftists have no options but to vote for the candidate that is a little bit closer to their views than the other one. That's a state we've been in for far too long, and there have been many candidates that have run to try and shake things up. But Kyle Kulinski's argument there doesn't test against his other arguments he's made himself very well, or the typical views of a leftist. So I just wonder where it's coming from as a political commentator. What makes you decide, you know what, I'm going to start making excuses for the Democratic Party, actually? It seems like a big switch up, and I'm curious as to where that comes from.
Yeah, he keeps talking about the perception mattering more than the reality of whether or not Cornel West is a spoiler candidate. And I think you're right. He should be the one explaining to people why that's not the case. If you're not in media to change perceptions, then really why even bother? That's kind of the whole point why we get on these screens and talk to people, is to try to explain the issues to them. Sometimes I learn more from the viewers than they learn from me, to be fair, but that's always the goal. And then also, how are you going to sit there and criticize a third-party candidate as a member of the Democratic Party when the establishment is so hell-bent, it seems, on getting rid of progressive candidates? I mean, they basically stole the primary from Bernie back in 2016. So what is the alternative that Kyle Kulinski would suggest? The Democratic establishment clearly has no interest in listening to many progressives in their party. They clearly are not interested in allowing a outside candidate that they did not handpick to take over the primary process. So it seems like in some cases, having a third-party challenger is the only way for that segment of the party to have their voice be heard.
Yeah, I think it's dangerous too. You have this guy, Kyle Kulinski, to me looks like a lost member of NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys right now.
I was hoping someone would bring up his frosted tips.
Yeah, please, we had to. I don't think that's going to connect. You and I are both coming from blue-collar backgrounds. I don't think someone like Kyle Kulinski with a billion books behind him and the frosted tips is connecting with a working-class audience. I think his audience is progressives who are politically engaged, which, if you are the Democratic Party, that's a valuable base, because I'm sure those people have blue-collar family members that also vote. These are the people that are paying attention to politics, that make time for it for whatever reason. That is what they do. Those people are very important in the political and democratic process in the United States because they will remind their family about elections. They will tell them their views about elections. If you want the left to win, you should be giving your audience the talking points to win over their family members for voting for a leftist candidate. That just is common sense. And so to me, this just reeks of Democratic Party interference, Democratic Party consultant going and talking to Kyle Kulinski and saying, like, listen, this is our argument for this. This is why that video we heard you and your partner in the car with the sunglasses on saying this stuff. It's kind of dangerous for us. Here's our vision. I think people who are media figures are susceptible to that kind of influence from members of the Democratic Party. This doesn't seem like it's something coming from a member of the left who wants our movement to succeed. And that's really scary because I'm sure there's members of his audience who listen to what he says and relay it. And so it's not really about the commentator having a huge base of voters who are progressives or members of the working class who are swayable by Cornel West. It's about having a base of people who go on and talk to their family members who are. And that's really scary as a member of the left, that someone could grow an audience based off of a leftist perspective and then switch up when it's election time.
Yeah, I don't know much about Kyle Kulinski's background either. I know the woman he's in the car with is his wife, Crystal Ball, who hosts her own program and is kind of considered a member of the progressive left. Kyle was one of the co-founder of Justice Democrats, which is a PAC that requires candidates to refuse to accept corporate PAC money. So I don't know if he doesn't necessarily have the grassroots organizing experience, but clearly there's still some inconsistency here, some hypocrisy here, and he's taken a lot of heat on that from the left. So we'll see if maybe this perhaps hurts some of his popularity among the audience.
Yeah, I think it will. I hope it will. Because when you have someone not making a strategic plan for us to gain power to see our political agenda ever enacted in the United States, how can that person be a leader? That's really what this should be about, is winning over either hearts and minds on the issues. That's what, a media presence could be used for, persuading people of your particular political persuasion, or, saying strategically the way that we gain power is not the way of following the Democratic Party. There's a lot of different ways you can use your public platform. And I think just building one off of being a leftist and gaining people's attention based off of communicating those ideas in a receivable way and convincing way on a regular basis to counter common narratives and the common media narratives we hear in mainstream media. That's good. That's useful. But then when you switch up on your entire audience and steer them in another direction, it's something we've seen far too often in the left. And I think if you get into this industry, and you get into this industry and you make a platform for yourself as a reporter, as a journalist, as a commentator, people will follow you because they trust you. People follow people. They're sick of the mainstream media. They watch shows like Rising and other online shows now. Streaming is big. And it's because they realize that you found someone you trust with a background you respect, and you want to hear the news and what's going on in politics from their perspective. And then there's a lot of people that can be led astray if you decide to switch up on them. It's just, I get that people change their mind, but I don't think that's what happened here, because Kyle didn't explain, I used to support Cornel West and now I have different thoughts on this. It was a very paternalistic, what do you think you're doing running like this? And it happens a lot in politics from political commentators, and I don't know where it comes from, but it makes me feel for audiences that have been led astray by, progressive networks and by progressive commentators.
Tucker Carlson said something in that interview with Dave Portnoy we talked about on this program, where he said he never really looked at his ratings, even when he was at Fox and he was the #1 show in cable. Of course, kind of a luxury not to look at ratings when you're #1. But he said he never really dove too much into the numbers because he was worried that it would lead to a self-obsession and that his show would be tailored based on what he believed the viewers wanted rather than what actually interested him and what he actually believed. And I think that was a good warning for anyone who does this media job for a living. That does it for us this week at Rising. Jessica, it's been a pleasure as always to break down the Friday news with you.
You as well, Amber. Another Blue Collar Friday here at Rising.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. We'll see you next week.
Bye, y'all.